Okay, so today we're going to talk about teaching students with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Um, Many of us have probably dealt with kids or been around people we went to school with, um, friends, parents, and have been around ADHD, as most of us know it as. And just because we've been around it doesn't necessarily mean that we probably understand it. So let's get started here. Okay, so let's start off with what is ADHD? As we know, it's been said, mirrored, people often say that everybody has ADHD. That's what I hear around. That's what I've heard growing up. Seems like people think that everybody can be diagnosed. That's not necessarily true. And if we look, we'll only see that 8.4% of children actually have ADHD. It may seem like a lot more. It seems like people want to jump to conclusions on ADHD. A lot of the adults diagnose themselves. A lot of parents diagnose their children, not actual diagnosis, but they feel that that's what it is. There are three types. We have the inattentive, the hyperactive impulse, and combined. With the inattentive, we've got what's there. We have the people may see it as laziness. They may see forgetfulness. Um, it may be, and all children have this, but this is going to be more pronounced. This is going to be more regular, to the point where it affects the student academically. Um, then we jump down to our hyperactivity, our impulse. This would be a kid shouting out in class, answering questions before the teacher's finished with the question, um, running around, running through the hallways when they've been asked to walk, when they know the rules are to walk, or jumping up and down to smack something as they walk, even if they're going to get in trouble for that. Unfortunately, we also have the combined type, which takes both the inattentiveness and the hyperactivity impulse. And so right here, now we're messing with, we got kids that fidget, that constantly need to move, they're out of their seats. The impulse may cause them to burst out, to make noises, and then we've also got them who are not focused, they're not organized, and that's the downside to that. So we talk about inattention. It's they don't seem to listen when they're spoken to. They seldom follow through on tasks, whether at school or at home. They have a lot of difficulty managing time, and this is a big one. Means they won't finish their work in time. They're constantly losing supplies such as pencils or books. And then they may become hyper focused to where they're so set and zoned in on the activities that they're doing that we're not able to separate them to move on to a different activity. When we talk about the hyperactivity and the impulsiveness, they want to fidget, they want to move when they're seated. They may leave their seats without your permission as a teacher. They may run or climb or things like that at the most inopportune and inappropriate times. And they consistently interrupt either others as well as teachers. Most children with ADHD, they're diagnosed in elementary school. In young children, hyperactivity is the most predominant type. Then when they progress through elementary school, it may change to inattention. It can constantly be evolving. And once they hit adolescence and they're in middle school and high school, we look to see that the hyperactivity isn't as great, but the impulse is still there, and the lack of focus may still be there as well. Um, what we need to do is consistently give them choices and things to make sure they focus on their decision making, things like that. So let's move on to the interventions for students with ADHD. So we have the list of 5. Begin with the behavior, parental education, medication, academic interventions, and the environmental supports that we can use. So as we begin, on our behavior, like with most things, it seems that with all of the behaviors that we've talked about this year and going forward with things, that the structure and the rewards seem to work for behavior issues. So positive feedback, motivation for students, allowing them to know that hey, you did a good job. Here's what I'm going to do for that good job. To give them something to continue striving for. What we could also do is use a daily report card, because it may seem like a lot of work, but if we do a daily card, the child can see exactly where he messed up, or she, and move forward with the next day. We could give them something at the end of the day to work on tomorrow. So, and we could also appreciate those small steps that they're doing. If we move on to parent education, we'll take just 1 second, I'm sorry. Also with behavior interventions, we need to worry about when we correct a behavior that we're calm, we're very clear, we're very precise, and we constantly remind them of what they should be doing in those situations. So moving forward with parent education, if there are educational materials that you're aware of, say that a child has recently been diagnosed and the parents are new to this situation, and those materials, suggest it to the parents. If you have an ability to get it, make it readily available for them. If it's a parent that has had their child diagnosed for a while and you're just receiving that student, we can ask the parents what they do at home. Ask what's worked well in the past, what have previous teachers done, things to that. We need to work with the parents, and because they're having the same struggles as we are. We also need to work on a system to where we define what the parent would like to see as a disciplinary action if something is consistent, and let them be aware that that's what we will do and what we've done in the past, because we don't want them to be caught off guard. Even though there is a diagnosis, the one thing we can't use the diagnosis as an excuse for inappropriate behavior consistently. So as we move on to medication, the biggie here, and I have to state this, is that educators may not tell parents a child needs medication. We're not doctors. We're not counselors. We're not. So it's not up to us to tell the children. It seems odd that most stimulants, that is the most commonly prescribed, it increases the dopamine in the brain. And it's strange, I know, that stimulants are what works, but that's what I've found. And there is a few issues to where they might not take it. Other kids may get a hold of it, and parents worry about that. But if we talk about what may lead to this, it may be a gateway through something else. That's just not true. Research has shown there's no correlation between taking medication for ADHD and further drug use or abuse of something down the line. So we don't have to worry about that. When it comes to the academic interventions, I spoke about here on the include model, and that's just cutting through the short of it, setting small limits on readings and things of such. So we may need extra time to complete a test because the student has lost focus. So it's definitely going to prevent them from finishing on time. They may need extra help with organization as well. We may have to assign specific people to them, a para or something to that effect. We also need to think about giving breaks for the student to get up and move around. That would be a very important one, maybe change seat or something like that. If we move over to environmental supports, this is what we can do in our classroom to prevent anything. So as we look at this, we can set the students to the front. They seem to do better. We can take away moving distractions. If we were to have a mobile, like an educational mobile, say the solar system, things like that, that would be something that you would want to take down. To that nature, we need to do away with all the distractions that would possibly be there in these situations. Okay, so the families of children with ADHD, so as I said earlier, it may be that they need to go to therapy themselves to learn how to parent a child with ADHD. This is the biggest issue with them. So the number one thing is we don't want to blame the parent for the child's behavior. They can't help what the child does. A lot of parents are against medication, so you may have difficulty throughout. It's just something we have to deal with. Don't forget, parents are struggling just as much as you are. So we have to keep that in mind. And again, I know I said it earlier, but we cannot let parents make excuses for a child's behavior if they're diagnosed with this, because it may not all just be due to the diagnosis. That may be something that the child has learned that they can get by with. And so we don't want that. So as we're moving forward, just some things to remember: that the child can help it to a point, but we can give them structure, we can give them reassurance, and we can guide them. Again, the parents, they're going through the same problems you're going through. We need to rely on each other for help. Don't forget, we can always ask a school nurse to come in, school counselor, things like that. And each child is individual. You may have had children before, and you may have children after, and I would say that each one's going to vary, and especially with the intensity level of each. And the student itself will be individuals with their learning, how we're going to have to create a learning for them, and it's going to be specific to that student. But the main thing is remain calm. We keep those rules up, keep setting those expectations again, give awareness for when something's going to be different, allow all the parents to come in, and it's just keep in mind, as with every behavior that we go through, that all these were the main ones, is reinforcement, calm, family involvement. And so that will sum up what we have here, and thank you for your time, and I will see you later.